Hello. Hi. Hi, everyone. Good morning. So without making the introductions boring, let's make a musical introduction, I guess. I mean, so the first song that I am doing is a traditional folk song, and I've tried to arrange it on the guitar, and then I hope that gives you the introduction of who I am and my music. But I mean, it's very rude to ask, but I would want you guys to be here for a while. Like, I know you guys are here. I can see people, but like here, for 10 minutes if I can have you. Yeah, so I hope that gave you some sort of an introduction. Did it sound like Kashmir? No? No? Nothing like that? We need words then to define it more. Then we'll do a vocal song then. Like, again, a folk song. It's a Kashmiri folk song. Yeah, I mean, so I have tried to blend in certain folk lyrics with the lyrics of Haba Khatun, which was one of a very prominent romantic poets of 15th, 16th century. She was the last queen of Kashmir, and all of that, like a lot of melancholy and romance in her poetry. But then there are other folk lines that I found are somewhat blending in well, so I tried to make a song out of it. It sounds like this. कौन ले गया? Thank you. So yeah, I mean, now did that sound like somewhat Kashmir? Please say yes. Thank you. Now that it is sounding like Kashmir, let's sing another Kashmiri song. So it's somewhat not, so it used to be a folk song, but then, of course, like 21st century musicians, we would not let any sound like it used to sound. So we have to do some sort of renditions. So there is this band called Parvaz that did a very beautiful rendition of a folk song called Rose Rose, Boz Mein Zar Madno. So I try to look up to my elders and then try to sing somewhat like them. Of course, nothing like that. क्योंकि वो लोग बुड्ढे हैं, वो लोग मतलब 40 साल के हो गए अब. And they have started it all for us, wherein you know, like we can actually express ourselves musically, narrate stories musically, and it's all because of a few guys that I want to name here. It's Mohammad Muneem, Parvaz ka Khalid, Maira school ka senior Zishan Nabi, who's an A.R. Rahman student. And yeah, like these are my elders from Kashmir who are taking all of us together. And yeah, I mean, we hope to see more music coming out of Kashmir and hopefully reaches where it is supposed to reach. So yeah, I mean, one of the renditions that Khalid did. I mean, it थोड़ा ज़्यादा sad सा लग रहा है. One last song and then I'm off the stage. But so it's again a sad song, but I've tried to make it not so sad. And if you feel like it's not so sad, we can clap along if it fits, if you feel like, and if there is energy in the morning. Oh, I would have loved to sing that, but limitations. Sorry. But I hope you like this one.
चली सीन मुचरी शर चली थल शी और थम
Thank you so much, guys. And yeah, have a nice day. Thank you.
Good morning. Do give another round of applause to Etesham Baba. Thank you so much. Thank you. Good morning and a warm welcome to the final day of Charcha 2024. My name is Napina and I will be your host for this final day as well. Please do keep your mobile phones on silent. You've been amazing so far, and I certainly hope that we can have a noise-free last day. In the attendee kit, you will see the agenda. Make note of the timings of the sessions and the locations so that you don't miss out on any of the key sessions. There is a QR code behind the printed agenda for you to give us feedback, and we look forward to receiving it. If you need help, please feel free to approach any of the volunteers who are dressed in a Charcha t-shirt. Thank you and welcome. With that, we begin with the opening plenary session of this day. The plenary is titled Viksit Gaon, Viksit Bharat, and I would like to invite the panelists and the moderator up on stage. Let me begin with Mr. Arun Maira, who was a member of India's Planning Commission between 2009 and 2014, prior to which he was the chairman of the Boston Consulting Group in India. Renana Ben is a popular face. Renana Jhabvala was president of Seva Bharat, I beg your pardon, an Indian social worker who's based out of Ahmedabad and has been active for decades in organizing women into organizations and trade unions. Mr. Vijay Mahajan, founder of Pradhan and Basics Social Enterprise Group, is an internationally well-recognized rural development professional who doesn't need an introduction to this audience. Good morning and a warm welcome to our panelists. The session will be moderated by Atul Satija, CEO of the Nudge Institute. I welcome all the panelists up on stage. Before we begin with the panel discussion, it is my pleasure to welcome Shri Atul Kumar Tiwari ji to deliver the keynote address for this plenary session. Mr. Tiwari is Secretary in the Ministry of Skill Development and Entrepreneurship. He is an IS officer from the Karnataka cadre from 1990 and has served across different locations and departments. Thank you, sir. Welcome to you, and over to you.
Good morning to everyone. On the dais, we have Mr. Atul Satija, Mr. Arun, Maira, Mrs. Renana, bin Jhabvala, and Mr. Vijay Mahajan, and the esteemed audience. This generally happens on the third day of a long marathon session. And this is also the early morning, so I will say my piece. You would have heard for the last 2 days a lot of things about the education, rural development, etc. So today maybe we can say a little bit about the rural. The topic today is, what is that? Viksit Gaon, Viksit Bharat. So it's like Maira Gaon, Maira Desh kind of a concept. We have been. I'm in front of the very august, very learned community, so I will confine myself to the line which the civil servants of my position would take. One is that there is a general acceptance around the sectors that skilling can play a very pivotal role in enhancing the profitability, productivity and efficiency of our economy, and more so in terms of the rural India. The Viksit Bharat 2047, which has been envisaged by the government, in this, the increasing the non-farm income of the rural areas plays a very, very important role. It is in that context that I would like to bring the skilling as a very important tool for meaningful employment and entrepreneurship opportunities. And I'm also reminded of what Mr. Maira recently wrote, that we also require a decent working condition, decent livelihood, which is also very important. If we see the rural India, I have earlier had the occasion to work in Rural Development Ministry as well, with when Amajit Sinha sir was the secretary. And we had brought out the Antyodaya concept and convergence paradigm, which we had brought in 2017 or 18. And since then, a lot of things have happened on the convergence side. What was missing at that point of time, I now realize in retrospect, was the need for skilling. And the skilling is not just confined to what the NRLM does, but also bringing them nearer to the creation of livelihood, mentoring, and market linkages, market support, and how they can be linked to the government schemes. Our reading of the rural areas says that we have the rural youth, they are looking for more aspirational work, and almost 70 to 85% of those employed in the rural India express desire to change in work in terms of some capacity across gender and age groups, showing interest in running a small manufacturing unit, retail or trading business. The older and younger women have very distinctly different aspirations. Nearly 30% of women respondents between age of 18 and 25 aspire for government employment, and this number drastically increases to approximately decreases 6% for women aged 26 to 35, who express interest in running a small business unit. The most critical challenge to enter the workforce expressed by the youth of rural India is lack of financial support, followed by moral support of the immediate family members. And there is a need for targeted support, including support from family access to mentorship and guidance, access to finance, and more rather than only vocational training. We have found that 10% of the rural workforce, they want to start small businesses or manufacturing unit, desired a full training course, and then 90% of men and 50% of women wanted access to seed capital. Other areas of support highlighted by youth include access to working capital, support for market linkages, ideation support, and linkages to government schemes. And those wanting to enter a vocational occupation, 98.5% wanted access to finance, and 83% expressed need for skill upgradation. The entrepreneurship is a very good pathway, but youth, they need intensive support and services to succeed. And it's not only lack of entrepreneurial skills and mindset, but there is also lack of access to seed capital, lack of understanding how to start their entrepreneurship journey, and how to bring the linkages to continue in that entrepreneurship is also very important. And agriculture, though not aspirational in the current state, has the potential to become a viable option for the youth. And when we say agriculture has a low productivity and insufficient profits, that can be reinvented with access to technical skilling in emerging technologies to boost productivity, among other areas of support. Now, this requires for a very convergent approach, and we have been discussing with Rural Development Ministry and NRLM in particular, and we have also working out the mechanism whereby the women in the self-help group, although they are organized, they have been given some amount of training, but how do we link them with the skilling in the enterprise which they are doing, and how do we provide them a mentoring and other support and let them grow up? That is the challenge which my conversation with rural development reveals. And it is here that I would like to bring back to what are the skilling what we are trying to do. You would have heard something about the PM Vishwakarma scheme, which is around 18 trades, where there is a convergent approach by the Ministry of MSME, Skill Development, and Department of Financial Services, in a sense that one group recognizes them based upon their occupation history. And when they are brought to the skilling side, there is 5 to 6 days of skilling. And this is skilling which we try to provide them with the emphasis on how they can learn the modern tools so that their drudgery reduces and their productivity increases, and also give them the full idea of the access to finance and the marketing support which will be provided to them. And after their training is over, then they get 15,000 rupees of a voucher for the tools, and all their books, etc., everything is designed in a way that they can have videos, and that is where they learn to. For example, a carpenter will learn how to use these new machines, or the potter will learn how to use the new things. And then they are also allowed, they are also given 1 lakh rupees of financial access. This is the kind of a model in which the recognition and skilling and finance, and later with the MSME, marketing support would be required. So the idea that the government, there is one scheme which is being handled by one ministry that is going away in the government of India. And more we find whole of government approach, not for the namesake, but I'm just giving the live example of the PM Vishwakarma which is happening. Similarly, that PM Suryaghar Mukt Bijli Yojana, if you talk about, there are also different ministries that are involved. And how do we give the entrepreneurs, how to give them a skilling, how the ITI trained people are allowed to work, and how recently we also discussed how we can bring SHGs women, like we have Jal Nirmal Yojana. The water supply schemes, they are run by the SHG group women in preference of others. And they are given a multi-skilling in the sense that they also know electrician work, they know plumbing work, they little masonry work. So they're able to do the house connection and maintain the water supply scheme which has been sanctioned. Of course, that is, we'd all agree, it's beset by so many other problems because of the parastatals and the lack of convergence or accountability at the local level. But at least we have found at least 3-4 states we have done a sufficient, very good progress in that. Now, in our sense also, wherever we are doing the scaling part, now we also recognize that just by giving skilling is not important. For example, we take PM Swanidhi scheme beneficiaries in 5-6 towns we did the pilot, and we are going to scale it up. We found that the people, although they are being given loans, they do not know how to run businesses. So we analyzed that, and we went out, and with the help of the Urban Development Department, we did get them skilling and marketing support, and this was a huge success, and many people have increased their businesses, enterprises, and able to repay loan and move forward and ask for further tranche of the loan. I would say that for the skilling part, if I would say particularly, we just revised the skill loan scheme, in which the credit guarantee scheme, in which the loan amount has been increased from 1.55 lakhs to 6.5 lakhs. Our reasoning is that there are many skilling courses which are available in the market and which are very expensive. Say if you talk about the travel, or even for the running of a cakery business, or for hospitality, etc. And there are many people, young people, who are eager to get these skillings and move up there in life. So this will provide them the opportunity to access the market. And we have also reduced our dependence or rigidity on terms of whatever they learn has to be NSQF, National Skill Qualification related things. So what I'm trying to convey is that there are the ways whether in the PMQI also, we are doing a lot of work with the concerned departments and special projects, focusing on the rural areas, particularly the Northeast and other areas, where we will be able to develop this skilling provided with the entrepreneurship support and linking to the market linkages. So I assume that this, over a period of time, and as the more we do, more learn from our work, we will be able to further perfect this module, so that we give a whole 360-degree rounded approach to a person concerned, or the groups or the collectives, so that we are able to not only bring them, aware them, but also give them a skilling for the relevant part, give them the access to the market, and more importantly, we monitor them for 6 months in terms of their mentoring and whether they are getting finances, etc. And I would say that getting the access to the finance is the most difficult task, and it requires whole amount of persistent approach. We have two organizations. One, we have the National Institute of Entrepreneurship and Small Business Development, NISBER, which is based in Noida, and we have an Indian Institute of Entrepreneurship, which is in Guwahati. And through them, we have done lakhs and lakhs of training for entrepreneurship, and we have many, many examples where the people, I will not call them beneficiaries, our own people, they have taken advantage of that and created businesses and employment in their own right. Other than that, we have this, for you to talk about the convergent approach, we have the PM Janvan scheme, which is for the tribals. We are working with the Microsoft, we are working with the Flipkart, we are working with the Coca-Cola, etc. And all of them realize that the tier 2, tier 3, tier 4 cities is where there will be a lot of concentration. And if we start working with for example, with the WCD, we have taken as a pilot 25 districts where there is a Beti Bachao, Beti Padhao Andolan. They have the detail, etc. So the first time, just tomorrow, we are going to have an orientation for the CDPOs, how we organize the WCD department and our own skilling part, so that all these women, they are allowed and to get into skilling and market support and entrepreneurship support. And by doing that, at that time, you also able to manage their health and sanitation and hygiene and other parts. So they grow up to become healthy females. And we have also kept a target that around 50% of them will also get into non-traditional livelihoods, non-traditional skilling, not general the stitching and beauty and other kind of things. Depending upon their preference and availability, that is also possible. And finally, I would end that we have made a Skill India Digital Hub, which is a very AI-driven, machine learning-driven, all that Avagar, the portal, which provides all these opportunities at one go. It is available on their app store and freely downloadable. That is where if a person goes and they say that what is it you want to learn? Do you want to skill? Do you want to go around and wander and find out what you would really like to do? Whether you like a free courses, whether you like to be entrepreneurship, all these things are available there, and depending upon their aptitude and the data, it also teaches that yes, you can try these 5 courses for these reasons. These are the centers available, and that is where you'll go and get it. And how you can go it, all the details are also provided. So idea is that how do we use, and Skill India Digital is also public digital infrastructure, and how we can be used to scale it up, further the entrepreneurship and skilling in different part of the India, particularly for the rural India. And talking about rural India, I'm convinced that the Ministry of Agriculture is doing a lot of things about improving the productivity, etc. And with the climatic changes and sudden black swan activities, it's going to be more and more difficult. And there's so many changes and improvements have been done in the delivery of agriculture services. And if the rural development, cooperation, skill development, banking, etc., they come together to help the grow up the rural enterprises, certainly the non-farm, income from non-farm activities in rural areas will increase. And as we go ahead and find that the living standards, hopefully, between the urban and rural areas also converge, then we also see less migration from the rural areas to the urban areas, and we find happy, satisfied people in the rural areas having a sufficient income to have a different, higher standard of living as well. That's all I had to say. Thank you very much. Ladies and gentlemen, namaste.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Atul sir. Thank you so much for your remarks. Great. With the Secretary sir underlining the focus that the ministry has on skilling and entrepreneurship, I think that's a good starting for us. I have a really august panelist with me, somebody who I've had the luxury of pleasure of knowing for many years, and I've learned from them so much, from their writings, from our chats, and from brainstorming and them giving feedback on the nudge journey as well. So feel really privileged to be in all your company here. A very quick round of intros. All of you know Mr. Arun Maira sir, member of the first planning commission, before that his entire career with BCG. Can we reduce some of these lights here so it's less bright? Thank you. We have Renana Bain here, built a lovely institution that we all take pride of across the country, Seva Bharat. And so many models that they have built, innovated over years have been now picked up by so many organizations in the country and beyond. And we have Vijay sir here, who along with the Rajiv Gandhi Foundation work, started Basics, started Pradhan, and started so many things in the country that all of us have learned from. He's been a thought leader in this space for decades now, and somebody who I've spent a lot of time learning from over the last 9 years of my time in the development sector. So thank you so much, all of you, for spending this morning with us. Thank you. The topic that we have is Viksit, Gaon, Viksit Bharat. And all of us know that and want a country that we all want to live in, where every fellow Indian has an equal access to opportunity, but not just that, a quality of life that we feel is dignified above the poverty line, and they can feed their families and dream and aspire for better and better lives for their children. But we don't have that available today for a large number of India. At a country level, most countries have solved for their poverty by moving people to cities, creating urban centers, and increasingly doing more and more economic activities in dense clusters. While large countries still have large number of people dependent on agri, India has a very uniquely large problem of insane number of people living in rural areas, dependent on very small land parcels now, and having to make ends meet. So question that India is staring at is, what is our path out of poverty for masses? Should we be getting people to urban areas and thinking that urbanization is the only way India will solve for poverty? Or do we have an alternate where we actually build the villages that are prosperous, that give opportunities to people and give better lives for them, which can't happen without meaningful economic activities happening there? But what are the models that will work in rural areas to create this prosperity? What are the ideas that will actually generate that wealth in the rural areas. And today we won't discuss urbanization and the case for it, but we do want to spend time on, as Gandhiji said, India lives in its villages, 7 lakh plus now. How do we think about the models of development in rural India that can actually create the India we want? So with that, I would love to have opening remarks from each one of you on how do you think about villages and the development model in villages, opportunities villages that you think can create the India we want. So we'll start with you, Arun sir.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Atul. You always put me on a spot I have to rethink things. And I have to rethink things. And this subject about India's villages, and does India's future lie in its villages rather than its cities, you didn't put this thought in my head. Gandhiji put this thought in my head, as you said. And I'm very pleased to be here today because, well, I personally was just touched on my forehead by Gandhiji 4 days before he was assassinated at his little child in this prayer meeting, and children put before him, and he touched the children, and he was assassinated 4 days later. But then I met Gandhiji embodied as a woman, his ideas in action in Ilabhen 25 years ago. So we're making the connections here, right? So I've been learning from Ilabhen, Renana, and the ideas of Gandhiji, and that's why I come to my friend Vijay, who, yes, with all his knowledge and passion for which he's highly respected of how to run a financially supported enterprise, he's created many, he's got the spirit of Gandhiji and the ideas of Gandhiji, and he writes about them also. So that's the backdrop. But let me be scientific. I'm a physicist and I was taught physics. I've never been practicing physics, but I realized some value in thinking about the phenomena in the world as systems, At the moment, the world is facing many problems simultaneously. We've got a lot of environmental and climate-related problems everywhere in the world. We have health problems everywhere in the world, different sorts of health problems, all combining together and in different ways everywhere in the world. We have livelihoods and incomes problems everywhere in the world, including the richest countries. In that fact, the anger against the economic and political systems of the United States or Britain is to do with people feeling that they're not sufficiently included in opportunities for making as much money as some other people are able to do. Education problems, skilling problems, everywhere in the world, everywhere. The condition of our cities also, let me throw that in. All these problems are represented in the 17 Sustainable Development Goals, which all governments and humanity have recognized that we've got a whole lot of problems. And here are the 17. They cover all these issues I mentioned, right? Environment, climate, health, education, livelihoods, condition of our infrastructure. It's all there. Okay? We had set out to achieve the SDGs. Every government agreed and signed, and we've got people working like heck, including NGOs and government aligning themselves to solve the SDGs. The goal was by 2030. Yeah, it's 2024, but the goal was set 14 years ago. By 2030, they'll have been solved if we work the right way. The recent estimates made, and people are using modeling and artificial intelligence to model that if you keep doing things in a certain way, where will you land up? It says if we keep solving the SDG, all these problems, in the way we are, it will be 2087. Now this is a waking up thought. We can't carry on the way we are. So what's wrong with the way that we are currently doing things? First, let's understand the systemic connections and the systemic structure of the global problem, which is that there are many problems, but they're all interconnected. You can't solve them separately, right? And the livelihoods problem, the health problem, the education problem, the environmental problem, you can't solve them separately. They all happen together, And they don't appear in the same way everywhere. The environmental problems as they are appearing in Kerala are hardly the same as the environmental problems in the Mali grasslands, nor in the islands in the Pacific, nor in Alaska. They're not the same. They're not the same. Similarly, I'm saying the livelihoods problems are hardly the same in different places. So we've got each problem appearing differently, and all of them have to be combined together to understand what is the condition of that place, that society, that system. So I did some calculations. So some people will say, no, we don't need to address all of them, all 17. But they can't say only one, because any one we realize is connected with at least 2 or 3 more. Let's say 7 problems must be addressed together in any place. Do some quick maths, but that AI will do it for you very quickly, and I got it done. 7 problems taken out of a set of 17, and how many ways can they combine? 93 million. So there are 93 million shapes that a system takes, which has problems of livelihoods, environment, inequality, education, that many. So how can you solve these problems in a universal solution? That is the problem of the SDGs. And what goes on further, if I might say, that we have ministries in their silos, like he mentioned, one skilling ministry, rural development ministry, agriculture ministry, all of them doing their best and their schemes to go down to the village. All of this is together like a khichdi. And we, NGOs and philanthropists and people from the CSR world, we choose to focus. We are working on education. No, we don't worry about environment. Or we work on environment. So we are actually worse than the government that way. Because we're even sharper, we are more knowledgeable and more efficient. We are making a khichdi of the place, of the people and their lives and our communities, whether in cities or in villages. So I come to what would be the solution. But before I jump there, I have to say, but why are we continuing like this? If now, scientifically you can say this, we shouldn't do it this way. And I say here, we miss out power. Where does the power in the system lie? Whose ideas prevail more and whose ideas are not listened to? Those who have authority like the government, naturally we must listen to their ideas or hell. Those who have money, they force us to listen to their ideas, to say, I'm giving you the money, you better do it this way or I don't give you the money. And this is why I come to the corporate sector and the CSR. They're so smart in using money to produce results of money. They say, I'll tell you how to use money effectively. They least understand a system. They're required by their laws to concentrate on a very narrow set of objectives, and so they do. And I'm looking at Atul, my friend, because this is where our conversation started many years ago. He's a great success, and I admire you for what you're doing now, is to say change our thinking. We have to change our thinking. Why India's, you mentioned 700 million, I thought it was 634 million, but statistics are not, people in our rural areas. Vaclav Smil, he's a environmental scientist, one of the world's best, I believe, a Canadian Czech scientist, and he's written several books. The one I have been most taken by recently is How the World Really Works. And he has used science and mathematics to analyze where non-renewable energy gets used, not directly like petroleum being in a car, but in our systems, the use of non-renewable energy is embedded all over the place. Systems like transportation systems, systems like production of materials, steel and cement. The food production system is the largest consumer of non-renewable energies. And it has become the largest consumer because we use scientific inputs, whether they are machines or they are fertilizers, and then global food systems for then transporting this stuff, refrigerating it, packaging in plastic and transporting it. So he says we will not be able to get rid of the use of fossil fuels in a long time unless we can defossilize our food systems. So he has to point to solutions, and he says, well, actually the ideal solution would be when many more people are living in villages, the farms are small, the farms are producing multiple crops whose roots and leaves feed each other. It's a circular system locally. Small farms away from cities. He said, but who in the world, now he's writing from Canada and from Europe, who in the world would want to go and live in villages? And I say, hey, we are the solution. We've got 700 million people living in the future, but we think they're living in the past. It's our attitude. And so when you talk about learning, I think we've got to humbly sit down and say, those women living in those areas, working hard and supporting families, and whoever else is around them, they are the source of knowledge and wisdom from whom we must learn, rather than Oxford-trained economists. So Renana Ben, I'm open to now listening to you about Anubandha, but you're in charge. Thank you.
No, I wanted to move in the same thing, but I would request Renana Ben, in the interest of time, to keep your answer to less than 5 minutes. But I would love to have your opening remarks on what do you think is the right development model. And Ila Ben has written very nicely about it.
I want to apologize. I should have given her 15 minutes and taken 2. We want to hear from them. I'm sorry.
No, that's totally fine. Please, Renana Ben.
Thank you. And Arun, I will pick up from what you said. First of all, you mentioned Gandhiji. And we are talking about villages. But of course, it's not new. For the last 75 years, we have been talking about villages. And you know, it's not been in vain, actually, because urban poverty has been growing, rural poverty has been declining. So the solution of moving to urban areas is not always a real solution. But I actually wanted to pick up on what you said. And I also I was going to say something else, and then I realized you talked about Ila Ben. Many of you may have heard of her, many of you may have not. Ila Bhatt, she was the founder of SEWA, Self-Employed Women's Association, which is perhaps the largest women's organization in India today. And she also inspired many of us. She was my mentor. I think even Vijay, I don't know if it's mentor, but close associate, Arun. And she had many ways of working, of thinking, which I would like to talk about exactly in this context. I very much liked what you said about 93 million ways in which you can combine. So that means that your solution has to be local. And how can your solution be local when you're producing in one country and consuming in another country? So I think that's the problem that Ila Ben addressed, that when you're producing in one country and consuming in another country, when you're producing in one part of the country and consuming in quite another part of the country, there is no link. And the production systems then get centralized. The second thing is, when we think about local, or when we think about production, when we think about Viksit, we think about the producer, but we are all consumers, and often it is the consumer which is driving the production. So I'm, if it's okay with you, Atul, in my 5 minutes, I would like to read more than, is that okay? So I'd like to read Ila Ben's words. Think about the distance between the consumer and the producer. Let us minimize that distance. When I consume the local, I'm enriching my own and my neighbors and my neighboring fields and my neighboring people. Let us consume in a way that nourishes us all, self, society, and nature. You talked about environment. To think in terms of distance is important. If my use of a product creates pollution in a river nearby, I will be more concerned. I will think about it. I may change my consumption. If the river is close, I see the damage. If the river is in Mexico and it's polluted because I'm using products that are made in Mexico, it will not affect me at all. I will not remember to care about it. It's too far away. So the people there will suffer. Over the last decade, the role of concern for the local has been declining. We are less aware about our local situations. Of course, we don't want to be parochial, but we don't also want to be ruthless, and we now are ruthless. We need to think in a more creative, correlated way. Now, the way that Ilaben thought of the correlation was not about everything. Let's go to the basic needs. And she identified 6 basic needs. That is food, clothing, shelter, which is our usual ones, but our world has changed. That's not all that we now, in today's world, think about as basic needs. So healthcare, education, and financial services. These are the 6 things that we absolutely need at the local level. Now, when you produce at the local level, you can produce food. That is very important. You mentioned food, local farms. There is a movement, as you know, called slow food, and that is local production and local consumption of food. It's not, it's a growing movement, and it enriches both the consumer as well as the producer. So, I mean, this is sort of the message, the main message, and I'll just say one more thing about it. What Ilaben was saying was that let us produce and consume within 100 miles. Now you cannot produce everything. Financial services is not produced internally, it's produced externally, but it can be brought internally, as can education, as can healthcare. So these 3 are brought from external to internal in every local, whereas food, clothing, and housing, and I can go into details at some point, can be local. And what she says is 100 miles is a moniker, a measure, an idea of a number which conveys an idea of community. It is more than a day's walk, but you can come back home at the end of the day. It is the reach of a community. So it is both a limit and the possibility of an autonomy. So it's not a hard and fast thing, but the whole point is that think of 100 miles, think of a large community, and how can that large community be autonomous in these 6 basic needs? I'll end there.
It's such a profound idea that you have local consumption, local production, and you have a certain size and scale, 100 miles, in which you can run it, that I'm almost tempted to ask Vijay sir to go deeper into it on his thoughts, but I don't want to box you. I want to give you the same freedom both of them had to just think about village development ideas overall and comment on it. We'll come back to this, what you said, Renana.
Yeah, but let me begin with just detailing a little bit of the points that both Arun made and Renana and Ilaben through her writings. First of all, let's take a systemic view of the situation. And as we know, system boundaries can be drawn very narrowly or very broadly. We can think of the whole globe as a system, which it is, or we can think of a village as a system. To me, the satisfactory unit of systemic analysis is what is beginning to be called the bioregion. You know, originally most Indian districts were bioregions. You know, when there were only about 250, 300 districts, because district boundaries were drawn based on rivers, mountain ranges, things like that. Since then, districts have been split and split and split, and many times due to political and administrative reasons, they violate the principle of being bioregions. But if we drew that thing, then you get a natural unit for local production and local consumption. Often that is, by the way, you know, 100 miles dia, you know, not radius. And you know, India has 3.2 million square kilometers, and if you do the math, it comes somewhere there. So, so that's one point. Secondly, then I did what I did was the last monthly per capita consumption data is from 2011-12, your days. Recently, a household consumption survey has come. So if you apply, it's only available state level, unfortunately, but if you apply at state level average to say a typical district, I did this for the old Santhal Pargana district, which is Dumka, Godda, etc., because I used to work there long ago. So it's stunning that the total, applying the per capita income of Jharkhand to the population of Santhal Pargana districts, if these three were united, there's 56,000 crores worth of consumption per annum. 56,000 crores. And if you look at the consumption vector, less than 20% of things, even today, when the economy is not really local, even today, less than 20% of stuff comes from non-rural areas. So, a large part of the consumption is, of course, food, although it's moved from cereals to vegetables, dairy products, some meat and eggs and stuff like that. And then there is clothing, there's increasing share of services. But basically, there's nothing in that consumption vector except a few metal items and a few electronic products which cannot be manufactured in Godda. I mean, I know that place, which is Godda, a God-forsaken place. If you don't break hard before you say Godda, you cross Godda. It's that small. So, but it can be produced there. So, even technically, it's possible to have viable enterprises living by this principle of local, and I'm defining local not as literally next door, but the bioregion. So that's one point. Secondly, now let's switch to the enterprise. It's not enough for the enterprise to be fulfilling environmental purposes or social purposes. It has to be financially viable. So the next question is, if this 56,000 crores, at least out of that 50,000 crores has to be produced locally, and we want sufficient local employment, the enterprises which produce that, would they be viable with today's competition and today's technology? And there, the interesting thing is, and this is Mr. Microfinance speaking, it's a very bad idea to set up micro enterprises. Micro enterprises were a solution for poor households to move them from uncertain low income to above subsistence level steady income, and it's done its job. 6.7 crore families are getting microfinance and are living reasonably okay. But it's not a solution to the employment problem of India. Even today, the micro enterprise only employs 2.1 persons. That is basically self and one family member, usually the wife, usually unpaid. So if we want employment to be created by enterprises, they have to be what I call Desi, D-E-C-I, Desi enterprises, employing 10 people. Interestingly, if you look at the latest NSS data on unorganized enterprises, out of roughly 6.7 crore unorganized enterprises, yet together having 11.5 crore employment, only a crore or so are 6 or more workers. But those crore, those 1/6 or 1/7, account for 23% of the total employment. So we need to basically now pitch for, and I'm sorry that Mr. Tiwari is quite characteristically after his speech gone off, but we have other ways of letting the government know what we think. It's time we focused on the next level, the DC enterprises. And these have to be run by an entrepreneur. I know you read my paper and you had a lot of trouble with the E in new, the entrepreneur thing. Yeah, we'll discuss that separately. But it's not possible for a non-entrepreneurial person to run an enterprise which employs 10 persons. And unfortunately, in the population, there is not enough of a stock of entrepreneurial people. There are roughly 10% of people who have those attributes. I'm suggesting we pick those, we finance them, we provide them all the support. The DECI and DECI and DECI stands for D for demand, E for entrepreneurship, C for capital, and I for inputs and infrastructure, which is more or less what Mr. Tiwari said. This package needs to be provided, and if we have roughly out of those 6.7 crore enterprises, the 1 crore which are already at that size, if they are allowed to grow, we will have 10, 11 crore of wage employment locally, you know. So both the solutions are there. To end, I think rural India is the greatest nursery bed of opportunities. It's just completely wrong to think that rural India is poor in terms of opportunities. It's just the current economy, the current political economy, which makes it appear like that. Let me just mention 3, but I can do that in the next round.
So that leaves us with a very optimistic place when we hear all of them, almost agreeing on the model that rural India has opportunities. There is enough local consumption possible. There is enough local production that we can do and already are doing, that the local economy can actually thrive and create vibrant, prosperous villages. But I want to actually go back to you, Arun sir, and pick up on what we discussed. We discussed the ownership, the capital, financing, the management, and the governance, right? Like these disciplines that are independent but are required to run an organization are determined by where the money is coming from, how it is set up, cooperatives versus regular companies, etc. Can you talk a little bit more about how should that system be designed?
You could hardly restrain me because he and I want to continue this discussion. And it's this, it's about employment and entrepreneurship. Stand up and start up. Be an employment creator, not an employment seeker. Now, if I'm going to be an employment creator, then yes, I have to create an enterprise. Now, I come back to Gandhiji and Ila Ben here. Here. The point is that a worker produces value. He's paid, compensated for the work that he did. He better do it efficiently. If it's valued in terms of the work, he gets payment. But the surplus that is created, the wealth surplus, goes to the owner and the investor of the enterprise. And it's the design of the enterprise, which I'm saying many people have been pointing out recently, but Ila Ben brilliantly, when I was from the corporate world, BCG, Vagera, and we can teach you how to, manage your enterprises more efficiently and scale them. She said, no. We call ourselves workers, all of us. It's the, Seva Workers Union Association. But we collectively own our enterprises. There's no owner other than us. And so this was, again, Gandhiji's beef against the capitalists. I like capitalism because it's a way of using capital very efficiently to produce a surplus of capital. The question, he said, is that the surplus that is produced doesn't belong to the capitalist. It belongs to the community. Now, that's a good philosophical idea, but it's the construction of the enterprise in which the fruits of the productivity of the worker, you compensate for the time with the wage, but the fruits of the productivity go in the hands of someone else. So unless the workers are owners of their own enterprise, collectively, so yes, I agree with Desi. It can't be a small unit, it can't be efficient just in itself. It would have to be doing many things. So like the farmers' movement in the United States, they were all, and they still are, they own their own farms. And earlier they were very small farmers growing cotton, but they realized that they needed a mill to gin their cotton. And one small farm can't own the mill. That mill was a cooperatively owned enterprise. Thereafter, financing of their trade, a cooperative bank. This is Ila Ben's model. And that is why the farmers of the United States have become the largest political lobby in the world. They're distorting our farmers' ability to be able to sell our stuff. So there's political power in the collective ownership of your enterprise too. Okay? And that's why Gandhiji said, I hate Marx. Because Marx said, okay, no, capitalist is owning, the state owns. But the state is then telling everyone what to do. And it's the same thing. It's like work in a Ford factory or work in a Soviet factory, the worker feels the same. Whereas if you work like in, I've sat with your people and Vijay, you've taken me, the people who are taking collective decisions, I mean, they argue with each other and stuff, but बहनें फिर जुड़ जाती हैं. And it's okay. So I'm saying the solution is somewhere else. It's in the design of the enterprise.
Please.
Okay, I want to sort of pick up what both of you have said. First of all, Vijay, in a way I agree with you that micro enterprises doesn't create employment. However, we have, how many you know the number of micro enterprises that we have?
6 months.
6.
I mean, India.
India.
Yeah, 6 months.
Of which 20% are women. That is the one that I have. And the thing is that if you look at enterprises, you see that you need, it's a continuum. So it's resilience, the enterprise needs resilience and the enterprises need growth. Now there are some which really can grow, which is what you're calling your DESI. But the ones that just need to be resilient, they are providing their own livelihood. So we cannot not support them. They also need support because for a small micro enterprise, it's very easy to decline into almost destitution, and then you become a laborer, and then you become laborer at the lowest category. So what we need to be doing is providing resilience to these small enterprises, and we need to be providing methods of growth to those who can grow. And I can just tell you from my own experience, one of the major things, you say market, but often, they do find their own market. There are many other issues. Capital is a very major issue. They rarely get any access to capital. You can talk about banks, but the kind of loans that you're now getting, Mudra and Swanidhi and so on, are all very tiny, tiny loans, same like microfinance. So the thing is that when we think about employment and livelihoods, you have to think about this whole continuum, the micro as well as the growth people. And I especially, with the self-help groups and women's empowerment, a lot of women are emerging. But the resilience of those women is much less than the resilience of the men. Again, I don't want to go into great detail. One is, of course, that you have to look after the household. The second is the mobility question. So, and often they are more innovative, more entrepreneurial than men, and certainly they are more subsistence oriented. So I just wanted to lay this before. We have been working a lot with cooperatives. One of the things that our system is not geared towards cooperatives or any form of cooperative. You try to run a cooperative, you'll run into 50 regulations. Each state has made running a cooperative harder and harder and harder and more or less taken over. So states have begun to take over cooperatives. Whether it is registered as a cooperative or a producer society or a producer's company or whatever. So if we want to go more, don't think the cooperative is the only solution. It is an important solution, but then you need to completely change regulation. And unless we change that regulation, people are not going to be able to come together. So, so just to summarize that, employment, we need to focus on the micro enterprises, which are subsistence, which can go a little beyond subsistence, maintain their own livelihood. We need to focus on those which are growing. So all of those are local. And then the cooperatives or the different forms of cooperatives, we totally need to change the regulation. Otherwise, this will not happen.
So Vijay sir, can you double click on this a little bit? So we talked about almost like everyone seems to be agreeing that we need economic activity in the villages. We need to have local producers, local consumers, smaller enterprises, DESI enterprises, all kinds of economic activity. but also the role of capital is very, very critical. So if we were to actually start to make this happen, assuming regulations are not a barrier and it's easy to do that, what constraints do you see in bringing this to life? Is it capital? Is it mobilizing people? Is it things to do beyond food and dairy that we discussed? What should people do?
So since we have only 7 minutes and you'll probably need the last 2, so let me talk about opportunities rather than constraints. Yes. Okay? Because in Chinese it's the same, you know, problem and opportunity is the same ideogram. So there are 4, I call them photo ops, but they're not photo ops in this sense, because the words begin with the word photo. So first is photosynthesis. India has all the endowments to be the world's food producer. We can feed the whole world, forget about ourselves. We have the soil, we have the rainfall, we have the biodiversity, and of course we have millions of highly experienced farmers, and we have a lot of variability in our climate and so forth. So we can produce almost everything in this country and also for the world. So let's use photosynthesis, and I don't mean only food, but also tree crops, horticultural crops, medicinal crops, flowers, everything. The second photo op is photovoltaic. On an average, any district in India gets at least 300 sunny days. Even in rainy days, there's enough. We use solar pumps. Even in the middle of August at 6:30 p.m., solar pump से थोड़ा पानी निकलता रहता है. It's amazing, you know. So we have to basically get away from non-renewable energy and solar. And now, as solar is getting linked to green hydrogen, so there are 2, particularly for transportation, it was a constraint. But now, using solar to produce green hydrogen, we can handle that also. Third is photo optic, basically optical fibers, which will do away with this whole mindset of being in cities because that's where everything happens. We live in the world of internet. There's no reason why we have to huddle together for work. When we need to, we should. We can be convivial in a tele way, and we can work also in a tele way. I mean, the COVID taught us a lot about that. So the whole nation has already been linked up with optical fiber. We need to make greatest use of it for education, for telemedicine, for entertainment is already being done, and for e-commerce. So connectivity through photo optics. And fourth is photogenic. Rural India is really beautiful. I never go to any part of India without feeling, yaar, kya heaven hai, and to come back to this dojak called Delhi, I mean, and we call these cities smart cities. I mean, what a joke, So actually, the real wealth of India lies in rural India, but because of our political economy, we've impoverished them by both exploiting the natural resources and the human resources, not investing adequately in those. And therefore, as I say in my paper about the new strategy, if we know what's good for us, the next 10 years, we need to invest 2 to 3% of our GDP in natural resource regeneration. Jal, Jangal, Zameen and Jalvayu has to be regenerated. That would unleash so much rural productivity that there is no need to migrate out of rural India for livelihoods. And to manage that enhanced productivity, we need entrepreneurship. I totally agree with you that it should be trustee entrepreneurship or collective entrepreneurship. Collective is very difficult both for internal and regulatory reasons. So trustee entrepreneurship is perhaps, social entrepreneurship is more appropriate. It's more easily doable in a rural 10-person setting than in an urban kind of setting. And finally, all that to enhance human well-being, to take care of our human beings, our young, nutrition, education, vocational training, our elderly, and our disabled, there's no reason. We have enough wealth in this nation to take care of everybody at a human level. We just need to change our institutional framework, and for that, in the last 10 seconds, unless we fix our politics, rest is all hot air. We got to fix our politics. That's the last sector that has not got professionalized properly. We've got to get together and fix our politics. And that's what I'm doing, by the way.
We have the last 1.5 minutes. So we won't have time for questions. I apologize, but I'm assuming some of them may be able to spare some time after this. You can catch them offline and ask questions. But it was really wonderful hearing all of you. I think you were able to almost together give a frame of how we can think about a Viksit Gaon with local production, local consumption, local management, local governance, and wherever we need capital resources, some things can be brought from outside. Obviously, there are different ways to structure, whether it is trusteeship, whether it is cooperative or others, but we are agreeing that it has to be local control of some kind that actually makes this happen. With that, we'll wrap it up. Any last thing you want to add, Renana Ben and Arun sir, to what Vijay sir said?
I think you
30
summarized
seconds
it so
each.
well. But you said Viksit Gaon. I think what we described as a vision, what he described was Viksit Bharat. Please let's not isolate the village as something needs special attention. We better pay attention to Bharat, and the villages are going to make Bharat.
That is what I meant. Yes, absolutely. Renana Ben? Anything? Thank you so much, everyone. Thank you, Vijay sir. Thank you, Renana Ben. Thank you, Arun sir.
Am I the only one who thinks that session was too short? Yeah. Thank you so much. I don't even have the words to acknowledge how deeply insightful that was. Thank you, Atul. We will now continue with our next session. I'll give you a minute to settle down. Please take your seats.